Good afternoon. My name is Roy Kirchner, and I am here in Tampa Bay, Florida. And we are on Secrets for Success in 2025. And we're sitting here on April 18th, literally a couple days before Easter. Wow, the year is flying by. Literally, I am a serial entrepreneur, have multiple businesses here in Tampa Bay. And the reason why we do this every single week, Friday at noon, is to pour out information to help businesses, business owners, and anybody and everybody become more successful in 2025. I'm looking forward to a great show today. Let me switch it over to John so he can introduce himself.
My name's John D. Hanson. The middle initial is important because if you want to find more than you ever want to know about me, use the middle initial. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all different kinds of places you can find me. But what I love to do, though, is I love to equip and empower entrepreneurial SMBs to achieve the growth potential that's there year over year, win-win success inside and outside their organization. I do that in several ways. I do strategic growth consulting. I do business coaching. I do workshop facilitation, all kinds of ways that I can add value to organizations that want to grow, that are forward-thinking, that are entrepreneurial. But I enjoy these conversations because I always learn something. Plus, I get to talk with fellow entrepreneurs and pick their brains on how we can help encourage others to achieve success together. Now, this is a journey together. This is us saying, hey, get up here where we are. It's like we're all figuring this out together. And so I enjoy these conversations. I'm going to kick it over to JR to introduce himself.
Thank you so much, John. And Roy, thank you again thank you to the both of you for including me in this powerful conversation. My name is JR Espino. My company, Alloy Advisors, is all about business strategy and leadership coaching. So with that, I must ask you a question. So that is something I often say to people who I work with. And that is, first of all, first question is, who would like to have a more engaged workforce? The second question I ask is who would like to be more profitable in their business? And the third question I ask is who wants to achieve all their dreams as an entrepreneur? And those are three ways that my organization can help. So I do work with small, medium business owners to be able to accelerate their profitability. I work with them to ensure that they have the right company culture so everyone is headed in the same direction with real employee engagement. And ultimately, it is about success. And so, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're thinking about entrepreneurship, or you work for an organization, you want to have a greater impact. These are the things that we're sharing today that will really help propel you to the next level. And I'm so excited to be a part of the conversation. I too am based in the Tampa Bay area, originally from the north, from Chicago, made my way down here and loving life in Florida life. Back to you guys.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we're on a Friday right before a holiday. And listen, John's actually going to pick the topic for today. So John, go ahead and tell us what the topic is, and then we'll start going into it.
Got it. Now, boy, it's a toss-up between the two. So maybe if we have time to get to the second one, we will. But something on my post this morning about the power of storytelling. Stories. What is a story time? But the power of story and how it connects and engages others. So I'm going to throw out the science and really bore you to death for 1 minute. But then I'm going to ask Roy and JR about how this has been a game changer for their businesses. So let's talk about this. The science behind it. If you share a story, Harvard Business Review, I'm not making this up. This is a study Harvard Business Review found. If you share something in the form of a story, the details and the facts, the information included in that are remembered 21 times better. Now, here's the science behind it, the boring part. The boring part is that when people engage with a story, so it's not just telling a story, when people engage with it, feel-good endorphins get released. There is actually literally a chemical response where they are responding to the story they just heard. So if you want to unleash the power of storytelling, and there's several ways to do this, there's not just one way to tell stories. There are multiple ways. We're going to hear that from myself, from Roy, from JR today. And these are things that you can unleash in your world, all the people around you, all the relationships you've got. The power of story and storytelling. So I'm going to start off by going to Roy and saying, in the conversations you've had with people you really respect, mentors, people you look up to, ones you've gotten advice from, how has the power of storytelling, either yours or especially hearing theirs, how has that impacted you and your business?
Gigantic, enormous, unbelievable. And I say it like that because being an owner, an operator of a business, the first thing that you actually really need to do is understand storytelling. And I would recommend, if you don't, start trying to be able to storytell, right? Start really being able to do that, because the first thing when it comes to storytelling is your entire team and telling them the vision of the company, right? The why are we doing this every single day, and what it's doing to benefit your life and every single person that we're serving, right? And I think that is the number one thing. So as you're growing up, or if you're in entrepreneurship, or if you're in any type of business, understanding how to storytell is such an important asset. So I just said as the owner, right? So I'm going to use that as one segment, right? And then the next segment I'm going to use as when you're meeting somebody, right? And
Yep.
your true authenticity of who you are, like to be real, you need to be able to tell them about you in a way, kind of like in a storytelling way, that people respond to you and respect you from what you're saying. And then I think one of the biggest things that I actually just did is I mentor a young gentleman. He's basically right in his early 20s, and I think one of the most important things that I've told him is he comes from Brazil, actually, and he just came here for college to the United States. And I told him, I said, working hard is great in college and having fun is great. But I told him this, I said, man, taking a tank of gas on a weekend, right, one day, and driving around Florida and seeing something new and experiencing something is going to help you so much in your future. Because when you're creating a relationship with somebody, you have to have experiences, right? You have to have these experiences. And I told him, I said, man, if you've never been to a Rays game, if you've never been to a Bucks game, if you've never been to a hockey game, if you've never gone to the beaches and seen the difference between, Clearwater Beach and St. Pete Beach and Apollo Beach, these are things that people are going to ask you, especially since they say, like, you just came here from Brazil and you came here and you've been here a couple of years. What do you think of Florida? And you got to be able to say some of these experiences. And it's experiencing life, right? It's experiencing life and then telling people about your life and what you experienced. And that builds relationship. Right. So, I mean, it's such an absolute necessity to be able to storytell nowadays, right, in this world, so that people realize who you are and gravitate to you, whether you're a business owner, whether you're, just anything you're doing, really. So, I mean, I'm just trying to say, anything you're doing, it doesn't matter who you are or what job you have, you got to be able to communicate with people. And being able to storytell is such an amazing thing. Right. So I'm going to kick it over to JR.
Yeah, so it's to your point, John, the science behind it, the brain works in spectacular ways, right? And so actually a long time ago I read a book. It's basically around storytelling with data, right? And so when we think about when we're conveying our message, a lot of times we're coming from a very factual place, right? But then when it comes to how we make it compelling, we connect to a story, right? So when you
Yep.
think about when we are living our life and we maybe watch a television show or watch a movie or read a book, we're connecting with that, right? And so similarly, when we're connecting with people in our businesses, it is about sharing that story. It is about sharing it in a way where it is compelling. So one thing that I often talk with my clients and prospects about is, what is your unique selling proposition? What is your market dominating position? Things like that. And sure, they can just talk a little bit about who they are, but if they don't connect with the person that they're speaking with or the people that they're speaking with, they're not going to yield all of the results that they want. And so, the other aspect of storytelling in business, Roy had mentioned vision. He had mentioned relationships. He had mentioned, establishing the kind of respect, like what is the benefit of one's life. You know, I always would tell people this: we are human beings before we're anything else, right?
Yep.
And so, what is the story of our life? Because whatever we've navigated has a story. Whatever we've done, led us to where we are today. And people get to learn from those things. People get to have that message resonate for them. And if we're able to translate that story in a way where it's going to have meaningful impact for another person, golly, it's going to be fantastic, right? We're able to, quote, multiply value in others. Just the other day, I facilitated a session for an organization talking about effective networking and how to be memorable, and there are 6 different keys that I cover, but one of them is about being authentically you, telling your own story, right? Not pretending, not, faking something, right? Because people want to connect with you. Whether you're an
Mm-hmm.
employee, a leader, an entrepreneur, business owner, people want to connect with you. Actually, studies show today that consumers, they care more about who the person is, not who the company is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
Yep.
as we're leading our organizations, we want to get to that spot where we are telling our story, that compelling story to connect with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say one more thing that I've found that's been particularly impactful, and this will work in twofold. One is when you're asking for others' stories, so often people have a question in their mind. Do you care? Do you really care? And if you can ask a question and then listen to their story. This is especially helpful. So the second aspect is I have good friends who are introverts. And they're like, I don't like
Mhm.
going to events, but I want to go to support my spouse, or I want to go because I know it's a good thing to do. But I'm introverted. Like crowds take energy from me. And I'm just trying to get through and survive the experience. And I thought, you know what? I think another part that drains you as an introvert is you got to carry conversations, but you don't want to do that. You don't like to carry conversations. As a matter of fact, you would prefer for someone else to carry the conversation. Well, here you go. If you want to get something out of an event, and you like to listen, you like to observe, you don't want to lead a conversation, come with just a handful of some really great questions of people that
Mhm.
you get a good vibe off of. But start with asking a question about their story. So what are you doing here? Or what do you do for a living? That's what everybody asks. Instead, say,
Mhm.
you do that. Why did you start doing that? Is that something you've done since you were a child? Is that something you got into
Yes.
recently? What brought that about? This is a question that enables them to share their story. Best of all, it communicates that you genuinely care about them because then you get to listen to their story. And if you ask just a couple good follow up questions to that, you'd be amazed how much time goes by. And if you get energy from learning from and listening to others rather than having to try and carry a conversation and make connections happen, you just need a handful of good questions and 2 or 3 people. You'll have 2, 3 great conversations. You'll come away not as drained from that, but more importantly, you'll have communicated to them that you care about them. People are craving for attention. And so social media tries to get it every way they can. But in relationships and in conversations, if you can communicate that you genuinely care about somebody, it's the quality of the question you ask, it's how well you listen. And then if you just ask a follow up question or two, then they know it wasn't, I'm asking you a question so that then you ask me a question and I can really talk about what most important to me is myself and my business and what I'm here for. That communicates. The 80/20 rules worked really well. Someone said, ask questions genuinely, want to learn about somebody and give 80% of that conversation to them. And then if it's a great fit, then they'll say, I've been talking all about myself. I'd really like to learn about you. Well, we've got a little bit of time left. And what it does is if you really like them, it sets up the opportunity for the next conversation for a one-on-one where you can take it deeper. So storytelling, asking them for their story communicates that you care. And if it's a great conversation, it can enable you to have a one-on-one outside of that event, but it's a way to be very distinctive. Most people in those events are going to be there to pitch themselves. They've got their 30-second spiel lined up, ready to go. They're itching to share it, and they're just waiting for you to be done talking so they can say theirs. Instead, be that
Mhm.
person that's there to genuinely learn about others and find out. We're going to talk about this maybe this time or next week. See if they're a great fit, if they're strong alignment, and you won't know that unless you get their story. So, Roy, let's go back to you've shared with me you've had some phenomenal conversations with mentors. What was it that attracted you to them? Was it their story? Or when you had, there was like this vibe, and then when you got to hear their story, it confirmed? Or was it both? I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think it's, yeah, I think in some ways, because at that point in time when I was looking for a mentor, it's definitely them speaking, right? And talking and storytelling, but figuring
Ah,
out, or like, this is back in the day, but
mm-hmm,
seeing how truly successful they were by speaking to them. And then if I
mm-hmm,
realized at that point in time how successful they were,
mm-hmm,
and the more success that they had, the more I wanted to gravitate to them. Correct. Because I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be successful. And if I found somebody that I could realize was successful, I
mm-hmm,
absolutely gravitated to them. So the
mm-hmm,
more they're talking, the more they're telling things, right? The more I'm being able to realize, how successful they are, where they came from, where they're at now, and also reading their personality to see if I match their personality, if we like each other, right? And then the
mm-hmm.
next is seeing if they
Yes.
have that giving personality. Next is seeing if they have that giving personality to want to like mentor me. So, I mean, these
Yes.
are
Right.
all keys, right? And I think that is one of the most scariest, truly scariest things right now, right? Is I don't really feel that the next generation is looking at that and having the ability to connect and understand what storytelling is. And that
Mm-hmm,
is unbelievably valuable for the next generation because of this one thing, right? That is the differentiator between you and AI. Right? Because you cannot in any way, shape, or form replace the human element of who you are.
mm-hmm,
Right? And it is so, so absolutely important for a young person to understand how to connect with somebody and provide a great first impression and gravitate to somebody that's older and wiser, right? And that can provide you knowledge. And I just see that missing tremendously. I'm not saying that there's not people like that, right? Like we're talking about a
sure.
lot of
Sure.
people here, but I see a lot of them that a lot of them that are missing this skill, right? And
Mm-hmm,
it's extremely scary, right? Because they need to be able to have this skill and they need to be able to differentiate themselves from a robot, right? And a robot is somebody that, like you said, puts their head down and plays video games all day. That's an AI robot, basically, is in the terms I'm using it, right? Where there's no
mm-hmm,
personality. So you got to be able to lift up your head, and I think that's important for anybody to start realizing that we need this like in school. We need to be able to teach the next generation storytelling. More
mm-hmm,
vital now than ever. More vital now than ever, right? Because they need that skill set to be able to get to the next level, right?
mm-hmm.
So it's those types of things that are going to get them to the next level, right? Yeah. JR, what are you thinking, man?
So, so obviously I agree with everything that we're saying here. One angle I'd like to approach here is also making sure that you even know what your story is, right? Because sometimes as we just sort of go about life, we're not really thinking about, okay, well, how does this impact anyone besides me? You know,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and what is that compelling story that is that differentiator, right? We've all talked about that a little bit. We have our unique stories. We have what makes us who we are, and how do we articulate that? I had mentioned that session I did the other day, and it was all about how to be the one that's remembered in a room full of business cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what it's all about, is how do you do that without growing a silly mustache like this one, right? But ultimately being able to have that story, knowing what your story is so then you can share it, knowing what kind of impact that it can have, knowing the meaning for your own self. Actually, I
Mm-hmm.
recently shared exactly that same point, and one of my colleagues said, interestingly, just earlier today I was listening to Tony Robbins, and he said the exact same thing. So if you
Uh-huh.
won't take it from us, take it from Tony Robbins. And he talks about, really knowing your story. in a way where you're able to talk about that compelling impact, right? And in that story, I said it earlier, we're human beings before anything else. So it's collective. All these things that happen to us, being able to share how it helps us in our lives, both personally and professionally, how we're able to take those experiences and tell that story and the impact, right? Because I'm sure that anyone listening right now, anyone watching right now, you can ask, has anyone ever, quote, failed or maybe experienced a situation where they thought they could have done something better? Every single person would raise their hand, right? And that is a story that can help someone else, that can
Yeah.
help, to Roy's point,
Yep.
the next generation, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
think about, as we as a culture, society continue to go forward, we rely on history. And guess what history is? A compilation of people's stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Real stories. And so how do
Yeah.
we make sure that we're sharing that, knowing our story and being able to share that forward?
I've got a fantastic tool or tip for particularly for young people. And you're thinking, I don't even know where to start. Like storytelling, I'm not a writer. I'm not creative. I don't have that much. I mean, you look at some of these entrepreneurs that are serial entrepreneurs and they've got businesses that they're running and they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s. I just graduated college. Like I got some stories from that, I guess. But how's that going to connect? Here's the great thing that I learned about 3, 4 years ago. Building a Story Brand is the name of the book by Donald Miller. And what he shared in that is the 7-step process that every blockbuster movie uses, every single one. Now, here's what's going to surprise you. I'm like, my life is not a blockbuster movie. Hang on. Here, bear with me. Here are the 7 steps. Every single blockbuster has that. That's why every single movie that's extremely seems formulaic, seems like they're going by the script they always have. Here's why. 7-step. Here we go. You have a hero. By the way, that's not you. You have a hero who has a problem, who meets a guide with a plan that, when implemented, avoids disaster and achieves massive success. Unless you're in one of those downer movies. Well, then there's a genre twist right there. Well, that's not what we're creating here. So here's the key. You are not the hero. You're like, yeah, but I'm not like Obi-Wan. I'm not the guide. I don't have enough experience. That hang on. You are casting the person you're talking to as the hero, not yourself. That's the key to it. So in a conversation, what you're trying to find out is what's going on in their lives. Your questions are geared towards the person standing in front of you, not trying to cast yourself as the hero or even the one that has the solutions necessarily. You're trying to cast them as the hero and hear out what's going on in their life. What opportunities or what pain points, one or the other. What are they going after, or what's getting in the way of what they're going after? You're trying to identify opportunities or pain points. Then you're like, well, how in the world am I going to be a guide for that? You don't have to be. It's not about that. It's like, so who are you looking to connect with? That's your next question. Because you're thinking, yeah, but I'm here to learn. I'm here figuring things out. When you've got them cast as the hero and they need a guide to come up with a plan, this is where the importance of knowing who's in your world, getting connected with mentors and established successful people. The more you have that in your life, it's a cheat code. Why? Not because you benefit from it, but because when somebody says, I'm looking for somebody that does this, this is the point of pain I'm running into. And you're like, I was just speaking with this very successful business owner I really respected yesterday at a networking event I was at. And he was talking about how he overcame that. Would you like me to forward his name information to you? Would that be of help to you? Already, regardless of your age, experience, entrepreneurial journey, doesn't matter. You're already connecting somebody that said, here's my point of pain, with somebody that might be able to have some ideas for them. And guess what you just did? You became a trusted resource. Anyone can be that regardless of age or experience. Now, if you are in 30s, 40s established and you're missing out on these opportunities to frame others as the hero and you potentially as the guide, then that's a massive opportunity. Where if you just think of that framework, think of every blockbuster movie you are casting them as Luke Skywalker and you're Obi-Wan Kenobi. They're the hero. They're the ones you want to make massively successful. And if you're just starting out, you want to get more and more people who are massively successful in your life so that when you encounter people who are thinking, what can I do about this, that, or the other? Always learn, talk to people. YouTube's a fantastic learning resource. Fill your virtual library with trusted, respected sources of ideas and breakthroughs and innovation because you'll be of value there. The best thing you've got, The thing that people need most now is technology. How to navigate that and build that into their business. If you were born and raised in that and that's all you know, you were born with a phone in your hand, you have an edge over people that are still trying to catch up. It's a second language for you, it's native to you. Leverage that strength and bring those tools to bear for somebody that's like, I'm not skilled at digital marketing. I'm not skilled at editing. I'm not skilled at this, that, or the other. I don't know how many young people can do that effortlessly. And it's a challenge for me. That's a super strength for you, where you can be a trusted resource on skills you didn't even realize were so valuable. Those are some ways that I'd recommend, and connect it to a story. Here's how I helped somebody that was struggling with a PowerPoint. They're like, I know what I want to say, but it doesn't look good. Can you help me with that? There it is. You're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So share it through story. Share it through story. Roy, let's go back to this element of story. Now let's go down the customer track. Why is sharing stories so important when you're trying to attract and keep more ideal clients? How has that played into growing your business with some of your best clients? How is storytelling factored into that?
Yeah, because you're creating a bond in which they have an emotional bond with you to continue to do business with you, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we know in any business out there, the best, still to this day, it doesn't matter of technology, the best referral is word of mouth. It's
Yep.
100%, again, human to human connection, right? That
Mm-hmm.
human to human connection. If you take care of somebody, no matter what, you want them to send you their sister, aunt, uncle, brother, cousin, friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if they're even out to dinner and they hear somebody that is needing your service, they say, hey, by the way, go see John because we used him and he just did a wonderful job. Like that, no matter what, that human element of somebody telling somebody else
Mm-hmm.
is stronger than anything else, right? And then we have to look, right? We have to look at one thing that tremendously changed in the world at some point in time or another was you don't sell anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Slashing prices and selling is
Right.
not necessarily the way to get business anymore. It's
Mm-hmm.
I 100% can tell you it was like slashing prices, this lower price,
Right.
right? And then all of a
Right.
sudden it changed to persuasion, influence, right?
Yep.
And what people are doing and how they're doing it. And that's through storytelling, right? Because literally you're changing the way somebody looks at something by them seeing something. Video is everything. The human element is
Mm-hmm.
everything, right? So it comes to that. And just to kind of give you, I think there's plenty of ways to learn how to story tell. There's a lot of ways. You've got tons of YouTube University. You can watch a
Mm-hmm.
ton of videos. You can listen to audibles, all of those things, right? But I want you to remember, again, we're talking about human to human contact. So I think truly, if you're looking at understanding how to storytell, do it in an environment where you're around other people and connecting with other people. And one of the best ways, and I've said this before, but is Toastmaster International, right?
Yep.
Because in a Toastmaster International club that they're all over the United States, people respect each other. They don't make fun of each other. They help each other grow. They help each other out of awkwardness,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is a safe place to go to learn how to speak and how to storytell and how
Yeah.
to make yourself better. And the number one thing, we were going back to these young people, right? Again, the number one thing too is you always got to remember. You always got to remember they got to learn somewhat how to storytell to get a job, right? An
Mm-hmm.
interview is storytelling. It's 100% storytelling. So mock interviews, same thing. They do at least teach that in school most of the time before you graduate, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
even high school or college. But mock interviews is not enough to get understanding of storytelling. That is, again, getting a great job, understanding how to get a great job is 100% like people understanding who you are and what you bring to the table. So you do need some of that human to human element in order to do that. A mentor, role models, all these types of people can teach you this, but it's that human to human element on top of books, audibles, YouTube videos, things like that, because you still need to be able to see somebody's reaction when you're starting to learn how to storytell. But it's
Yeah.
just so powerful nowadays, right? So, and if
Yeah.
any of the
Now,
audience has any comments on this, please feel free to comment below and let us know, what you're thinking as well, how important this is. But I'll
yeah.
kick it back to you guys.
Now, JR, you've got a tremendous experience over 25 years, over 27 years, actually, all different kinds of roles within a Fortune 500 company. And I'm curious to hear about stories internally, with how it impacts team, how it impacts leadership, how it helps with culture. Because you've got a great handle on that with the different leadership roles you've had within that organization. Tell me about some experiences you had with story and how that helped with culture and with teamwork and with buy-in for people internally, say colleagues in parallel, not necessarily customers, but inside an organization.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. When you think about stories, we're picturing in our mind, right?
Mm.
And so one of the things that we would often talk about going back to vision that's been
Mm-hmm.
brought up a few times here is that the vision needs to be crystal clear, something that somebody
Yeah.
can actually imagine in their mind. And there's a session I facilitate around, vision being very vivid, that it's something
Mm.
that people really intensely want to be a part of, things like
Yep.
that. And so, one of the things I would always tell other leaders, whether they reported to me or other leaders who I was helping support, was it was the leader's responsibility to connect the dots for their employees, their hierarchy between the activity and the results, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they needed to be able to do that in a way that was compelling so that then people bought into it, that they
Yes.
knew the purpose of it, right? That there was a story behind it. It wasn't, oh gosh, you need to answer the phone within this amount of time just because, right? But
Right.
it's imagine if you were calling your cable provider and you
Uh-huh.
were on the phone waiting on hold for 5 minutes. How would
Yeah.
that make you feel, right? Like
Yes.
that right there is a very brief story, but it again it appeals to the person's emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so taking those real life experiences and turning that into a story. Another example is around, it doesn't even have to be your own. It could be you look at stories around
Mm-hmm.
celebrities or stories around athletes. A story that I would often use was that of Michael Jordan and telling his story with the fact that he did not make his high school basketball team and he
Mm-hmm.
put forth a lot of effort in order to become a great basketball player. But then when he went to college, he was successful there. Sure, there's national championship and that sort of thing. Great.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he transitioned into the NBA, he did not achieve all the things that he ended up achieving later on. And, it was a story of his resilience, a story of him putting forth the effort, right? And so in the business place, the story doesn't even just have to be yours. But what are those stories? Again, going back to I said it's history. What are those things that have gotten the results that you want to have in other people, right? And so again, whether it's resilience or work ethic and attitude, or even what is the impact that my work has in order to have meaning behind it, it catches a little bit differently. Again, the example, answer the phone quickly. Who cares? Hey, wait,
Right.
if you're on the other end of the phone, oh my gosh, you're right. I hate that. Okay, yeah, I'll do that for my.
Yeah, those are good examples. I think two ideas that come to my mind. We don't think of them as stories necessarily, but testimonials are other stories about us. That's why they're so powerful, especially
Yeah.
looking at video testimonials. Testimonials are huge. That's third party validation that, yeah, John, Roy, JR, they know what they're talking about. Good people. You definitely want to work with them. The other one I heard from a speaker was really good. He said, oftentimes it's hard to come up with stories kind of on the spot. You feel like it's my turn and I have a story. He said, as you go through life, just like we take pictures and we have collections on our phones, he said, have a place where you tuck away good stories. An experience like that was a neat experience. Make a story database sound so cold and analytical. Make a collection of stories. As you have an experience that was meaningful for you, put just a sentence or two that describes what that is. I have a notes thing in my phone, and I just tuck those away. Because when we're having a conversation and you want to have a meaningful something or other, and you want to share a story that happened recently, that's going to be of interest to people. It automatically makes the conversation more interesting, and it's recent, it's fresh. So another thing that I do is when I leave for work in the morning, I've actually trained myself to do this now. When I leave for work in the morning, as I'm pulling out of the driveway, I have 3 things that I'm grateful for from the day prior. It has to be 3 fresh things. I can't have said it before that I'm grateful for, but it does accomplishes 3 things. Number 1, it starts my day off with gratitude. Great way to start. Number 2 is it's training me to look for, it's framing my day in gratefulness, but then I'm looking for things to be grateful for because I'm going to do this tomorrow morning and I need to have at least 3 things that I'm grateful for. But also, this starts creating in our own minds stories. I learned this from David Horsiger, founder of the Trust Institute. He said the number 1 quality for earning trust in others, gratefulness. Think about it. When you're around people who are grateful, you're far more trusting of them as opposed to the ones who are chronic complainers. So there's a tip for you right there. Make sure your stories have some sort of gratitude or positivity wound into them. Yeah, you can have, bad news travels faster. I get that. But if you're wanting to have positive impact and make a difference in people's lives, and not that kind of a difference, if you want to make a positive difference in other people's lives, then start listing something you're grateful for. That automatically leads into a story. You know what? Yesterday, I had this happen, had a fantastic conversation. Here's what I loved about that. I'm so grateful for that time we had. That is a story, and the underlining element of that is gratefulness. If you think of what you're grateful for that just happened yesterday in the last 2 days, that becomes a story. And it's a great way to connect with someone in a positive way that also communicates you're a person that looks on, who has an optimistic outlook on life and who's grateful. That's going to really start. And then when you find somebody else who is, now you found somebody who's aligned. That's going to be our topic next week. It's going to be a fantastic topic. Alignment, fit. That's what kind of things you're looking for synergy. But those are some tips that I found about stories we don't typically think of that are. Now, we've only got 10 minutes left. So this is going to be a quick round of 3-minute or less. So, Roy, what would you say what's something you do to keep track of stories, whether that be for your team, for vision, whether that be for your customers, or whether it be for friends or colleagues? What's something you do to keep track of stories that you can share with others?
Things like this, 100%. Like
Conversations?
literally making recording, making videos.
Recordings, yes.
Gosh, that's the best. And they can be internal. So like if you have a team and you're doing meetings inside, you got to remember some of that is great if you're headhunting to get new people in, because then they could actually see some meetings that you have. You could let them watch them, right? And you could see how everybody in the company's interpreting the meeting that you're having. So I think all of these types of things, like recording them, is you don't always have to put your recordings out to the masses, right? But there's like, people learn. We know how people learn. They learn way better by seeing and watching something than reading or listening even to it. Video
I love to
is
read,
the most
but I hear you.
Powerful. Yeah, video is the most powerful element. So I think that is the biggest thing, is doing that, right? And you catch yourself, right? You catch yourself because you can always improve, right? So even if you record video of yourself, right, you're going to improve every time you go along. It's so interesting because I had a friend of mine I was on the phone with last night, and he's like, man, every time, Roy, he's like, when you first started making videos on social media, he's like, I see that you're getting so much more comfortable in front of the camera, right? And it just takes time, right? It does. It takes so much time, effort, and consideration. And a lot of people are fearful of that, or a lot of people like, shoot, the number one thing, I think, right? I'm pretty sure about this. I can't remember but people hate to speak. Right? They hate to speak on stages. It's like the most scariest thing. It's the most scariest thing. So, overcoming, but that's the beautiful thing about life, is overcoming challenges that are put in front of you. And that's living, right? That's overcoming things. That's becoming bigger, stronger, better. So, but those things, that would be my nut. That would be my key to tell people, is use the power of recording video, whether it's to give out to the masses or private for you or, just for a team. It's so powerful, right? It's so powerful to have that now. There's nothing better. So, I mean, I think that's my little nugget for the end right there. And then I'll pass it over to JR.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as a
so it's funny.
speaker, you've got all
Oh, go
kinds of
ahead.
stories, I'm sure, right?
Yes, I have. And so here's the thing is, the question you asked was, how do we keep track of our stories? And
Yeah.
interestingly, I don't have a mechanism to track my
Okay.
stories, so I bring, Roy brings a great point with the recordings. That's fabulous. And I will do that. But, for me, when I am interested in a story or when I have my own story, I'm being really purposeful. It is all about me being purposeful. And it's how am I
Mm.
connecting with that? And so a lot of times as I'm navigating life, I'll say, oh my gosh, I just read this thing. And then I talk about it, but not just from the standpoint of sharing the data, the facts behind it, but then even
Hmm.
incorporating the human element of like, how did that make me feel? And having conversation about it. Now, when it comes to presenting, right, you're right. In my past life, I had an opportunity to help develop learning instructors and presenters and how to convey their message and convey their story. And so, in some cases, it was just thinking about what is the outcome that we desire and then knowing who we are, knowing our experiences well enough to be able to tie it to it. But quite frankly, in a presentation environment, it's actually okay to tell someone else's story as long as they're okay with it, right?
Hmm.
It's actually okay to say, you know what, I met this individual and this is the challenge that they had experienced without naming names. And it still is
Sure.
going to resonate, right? I mean, gosh, you could even adopt it as your own, and it doesn't have to be, quote, your story, because it's what is the message that we're trying to convey. And
Hmm.
so, to me, I think that it is about knowing those different things in your own experiences. John, earlier you mentioned testimony, right?
Mm.
Roy, earlier you mentioned Toastmasters, and so part of my background, I was a course coach for Dale Carnegie Training,
Mm.
and in that space, we talk about how to tell a story where it creates a lot of imagery, that it gets
Yeah.
people to really think, provide a lot of details, because then it's going to the point earlier, it's different in hearing the story in that way compared to just reading it. It's
Hmm.
going to paint the picture for them. It's going to create that connection. And so in the Dale Carnegie space, it would always start with picture this.
Ah,
And then you
picture
go
this.
into the story, right? You talk about it and whatever that story may be. And then, get to the point where you're able to have what are the things that have, quote, worked in the different environments, right? What are the things that we can continue to be authentically who we are without it being scripted, right? And so as we continue to experience life, these are the things that we want to share. Gosh, there are things that I'm already sharing stories from like last week that happened, to me. And it's because it had some sort of meaningful impact for me. I'm going to share it with someone else. And I can also draw upon stories from way back when. Actually, I just did this just the other day. I reference a story from, gosh, 30 years ago
Yep.
and how it made a difference in my life and how it can make a difference in that person's life, right?
Mm.
And so think about, I think last week we were talking a little bit about how stuff happens to us and we need to figure out how it happens for us. So
Yep.
similarly, life happens for us and use those as a part of our story for how to help yourself and how to help others in their successes.
Yeah, it's well said. So my quick snippet, I got two. One is if you have this seems like what's the big deal? I talk about stories all the time. I share what's going on in my life. You know there are people that struggle with that. If that's a strength for you, that's a way you can help others. If you've got peers that are wrestling with that and telling stories, sharing stories of how it impacted you, if that comes easily for you, then that can be a way you can add value to others. It can be even
Yeah.
something that you coach others on. You can be a coach of your peers if sharing stories that have a point to it that connect or resonate. There's something you learned from it and gained from it. If you have an ability to do that naturally, then if you like to write stories, if being kind of a screenwriter ability, if in your mind someone has an idea and it turns into a movie plot in your head, that's an ability to write off of an idea. That's an ability to tell stories. So if you have an innate strength for that, that's something you can help your peers with. You can actually become a coach of your peers on how to. Now, well, who would I share this with? What if there's people that got a presentation in class and they are scared to death? Jerry Seinfeld had something, a stat that he shared in a funny way, saying, the number one fear of people is public speaking. The number two fear is death. That means if you're at a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy. Well, a lot of people feel that way, like they're scared to death to speak in front of others. Well, if this comes naturally for you and you've figured out how to do that, share those ideas with others. It'll make you a fantastic resource. The second one is some great stories to share are wins. People love to hear wins. Here's the caveat. The people who are abundance minded love to hear other people's wins. If it becomes this comparison about where people start sharing their wins to top your win, then you figure out, well, that person's not somebody I want to spend time with. But when you share your win with somebody and they celebrate with you, that's somebody you want to keep in your life. Share stories about wins that you have in your life and see who responds in a positive way and says, that's fantastic. They celebrate with you. That's a way that you can bring joy into other people's day, because other people want to celebrate other people's wins if they're abundance minded. You want more people like that in your life. So I know we're getting close to the end of time here. Time flies. Next week, we're going to be talking about alignment, about fit. This is such a big topic. That's what we're going to talk about next week. So we're already teeing it up for that. We got 1 minute left, Roy. So I'll turn it back over to you to take us home with any housekeeping, and then thanks again for making this conversation possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We extremely appreciate it. Listen, we're here to provide knowledge to help you be extremely more successful in 2025. So feel free to reach out to any and all of us with anything that we could do to help you. And again, we're here every Friday at noon. We do this. And if there's a topic that you want us to cover, you can also reach out to us and let us know that as well. We have a lot going on in the world right now. So there's a lot of maneuvering that we're doing as business owners right now. I can promise you that. So I'm staying very busy trying to maneuver through all the hurdles and obstacles that are coming in 2025. So it's those types of things. So I appreciate you listening in, and looking forward to you all coming back next Friday. Thank you, and have a happy Easter and a wonderful weekend. And